We are the University of Minnesota Twin Cities Gopher Drone team with the Minnesota Space Grant Exploration Flying Quadcopter Challenge. So as an overview for our final presentation for our data results, this is our overview for this presentation.
Here's a few of our final designs. There you can see the final design for our solar breadboard and the final design for our sample returns, both liquid and solid.
This is the walkthrough of the lessons that we learned. During our testing phase, we had a magnetic spike at the very beginning to signify our start time for this project. And then we had 3 separate spikes where we tested it against other magnetic objects. We had multiple SD cards to switch out because our XBs were unreliable and were not prepared to fly on the day that we needed to fly them. Our sensor suite needed a feedback loop with our LED light to show that it was actually reading data and functioning. Our drone cam, we also figured out that our drone cam timed out if it was not flying. We also had to adjust our Velcro straps to make sure that whatever object was holding was stable, and our power cables broke during the middle of our test, so we had to use electrical tape to fix it.
And here's a few videos from our actual flight. The first one you can see to your left will be our first flight where we're trying to get one single shot of the entire area. Here, the second video is our attempt at sample return, trying to get the solid, as you can see in the picture, the video, I mean. And there you go. And the third video on top is us actually trying to scope out the field, trying to see the backside where our eyes can't see. This is the backside of the tower we're trying to look at right here. And yeah.
All right, so these are the initial things we noticed after doing the fly-through. We noticed that the liquid from our sample return was cool to touch. It was initially muddy, but after a while it settled out, and you can see that sediment there on the bottom settled out. The gravel and sand mixture was also initially wet and cool, and it looked like kind of a mixture between gravel and sand. And we also noticed that there was a bucket on the tower that had flashing lights. We weren't quite sure exactly what colors. We thought maybe green and blue, maybe some red, and we could see that they were flashing off the bottom of our drone, but we couldn't get a whole lot of information about it.
For our points of interest, the main 3 points were the envelopes, buckets, and images. In order to plan our flights, they were in yellow, purple, and blue, respectively, in this map image on the presentation. And the importance of this map is that we can use it in future missions if this was a research vessel. For our map here, we used image scaling by measuring the pixels in an image and then using our scalar object as shown in the bottom right corner, which is the blue square, which is our landing pad, to measure the other objects in the image, which allows us to scale the pixels in the image and then measure other objects. As you can see, you can scale quite a few objects in this image just by having this one image. And then we can also find height by measuring the distance between that and using scale. A lot of it is scalars to find different measurements on the map.
We managed to get a few pictures of things in the area. This is the ground image. We had a image on the ground of the area. This one, we at first thought it was abstract art, but upon further research, investigation on our video, we saw that it looks like a landscape. We think we've seen it before, but we couldn't place where or when. We do notice though, on the right side of the image, it looks like a trench. Here is our second image. And at first, it looks it looks like a sandy terrain, though we couldn't scale it. So we were kind of in between if it was a fossil or if it was a desert terrain.
So this was some pictures from the back of the cardboard. There was an upside down text that we were trying to read. And after reviewing our video, we could tell that it said, "How far down can you read?" I guess it was how far up because it was upside down. But there were what looked like maybe 3 rows of letters The first ones look like maybe MD or MD&P or maybe NOP. So maybe the top row is NOPQR, alphabetical, but we weren't exactly sure what those letters were. And here's some pictures of the liquid and solid sample containers. And then we also, after looking at our video, we noticed that the lights on the bucket went blue, green, and red with a pause after. So it was like a did-da type thing. So kind of like the letter R in Morse code. So the blue and red were shorter with the green one longer.
So here will be our sensor graphs from all of our data. So from flight 1, we flew the IMU, which measures magnetic field acceleration and gyration, and a temperature sensor and a humidity sensor. So here's the magnetic field data. So the x-axis is the time since liftoff in minutes, and the y-axis is the magnetic field component in 8-scale Gauss. So you can see at these times is when we were flying near envelope 1, here's when we were flying near envelope 2, and here's where we were flying near envelope 3. And this black line signifies when the drone lands. So any data recorded after that is when the TC is in our own hands. And this will be the same for all of the future graphs shown. So we didn't see any spikes in magnetic field from our data, which suggests that either that there was no magnetic field in the area, or that we did not fly close enough to measure any magnetic field. We do see a blip here near when we were flying near envelope 1. So it's possible that there could have been some sort of magnetic field there, but it could have just been a sharp movement of the drone causing that. And here's the gyroscope and acceleration data, which can be shown, and we can see that at the same times is usually when there's some disturbance in the measurement, so possibly when there are some sharp movements of the drone, and they always occur at the same time. And here's the data from our relative humidity sensor. However, it measured humidities above 100%, which is not possible, so that lets us know that the sensor failed during flight. However, the day before, during the walkthrough, we did successfully record data from the humidity sensor, and because it is the same room, we can assume that this was the same for the fly-off day, that the relative humidity in the room is about 35%. And the temperature sensor, which was contacted the liquid in the bucket and the gravel sand solid, so it would have been able to measure the temperatures of those things. However, it did not work correctly, and we suspect that it was perhaps wired incorrectly during flight in our hurry to get the sensor out. And so we were lucky if we have some more temperature data from flight 2 using a different temperature sensor. So flight 2, we flew the XPs, which were unable to be flown on flight 1 because they were not working yet, and we did not have the way to fly them. And then the quick pressure sensor and the altimeter were also flown. So here's the ambient pressure from the quick pressure sensor. So here's when we land. Here's the envelope 3 and envelope 1 when we were flying near those things. So we can see after we land, the ambient pressure seems to go down, which now if we look at the altitude, we can see the altitude then is going up, which makes sense because in this flight, we had low battery in our drone, so we were not able to fly much more than a foot or two off the ground, which would make sense. It was going up after we had landed and we were picking up the drone. And here's the ambient temperature data. So the first thing we notice here is that it is steadily going down during flight. So we suspect one of two things. Either this is an error in this temperature sensor, or it is due to the drone blowing wind onto the sensor, which causes it to slowly cool down. So here's when we are flying near envelope 1 and near envelope 3. We can see during envelope 3, there seems to be a slight rise in temperature, and it is stagnant for a few seconds. So we suspect that envelope 3 possibly was warm or hot. Here are a few pictures.
So as Emily mentioned, one of the interesting things that happened was we were running low on battery, and we ended up having to fly under the table, as that video shows. We even got a little bit snagged on one of the envelopes, but we managed to make it back. And we also had a computer break about 10 minutes before the competition, which was sub-ideal, but we managed to adapt and improvise on the fly.
Thank you to everyone on this team, and especially to our advisor, Professor Flatten, who has helped us so much throughout this entire competition and giving us lots of guidance and feedback.